Yeah, I love that, the Jerry Fu experience. That's just it's such a good tagline, right? I mean, you're gonna get the Jerry Fu experience. It should be like a movie title or something. I don't know, the
Yeah,
Jerry Fu experience.
that's a start. Yeah, no, I need that's probably I need to put it on my website now. Absolutely, the Jerry Fu experience. Absolutely.
Has a great ring to it. I love it. Jerry, so nice to see you. So glad you were able to do this here. I know we've had some killer conversations before, so I'm really excited about this today. If you've listened to the previous episodes, you know that the concept here is to figure out who you are, what you do, and how you can help other people. So let's get right into it. Who are you?
Yeah, I'm a mess of identity and things. Uh, I am, but for the sake of the conversation, I am a leadership and career coach for professionals, in multicultural settings. Basically, is one way I can say it. I help them basically figure out how to become more visible, vocal, and valuable in their settings if they come from a culture that tells them to follow the rules and stay quiet. And I also help them with transitions in life and career, personal, professional development, because right? When you realize that you don't want to live according to the expectation of others, that's great. But then you say, well, how do I even lead myself, right? And how do I even know I'm on the right path, right? And that's the terrifying part that people don't realize. They just think, oh, I'm so free of everyone else's expectations, but now I don't have the direction for my own life. So how do I start steering my own ship? And so yeah, I do this keynotes, workshop facilitation, coaching, both individual and group, and then just happy to have conversations like this.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that is beautiful, and I agree with you. It really takes a lot of not just courage, but really self-identification, right? Who are you? What do you stand for? What are your core values, right? To really figure out where it is that you need to go in life. Now, one thing that I found in all of these conversations really is people don't just go to high school, finish high school, become a coach, right? Or go to college, become a coach. It's usually some kind of other career, usually first, maybe even a life altering event, something that really challenged you in some way. And now you turn around, become a coach in order to help others through those same or similar challenges. So, what's your path been like leading up to this? How did you get to be the coach you are today?
Yeah, it's been a rough and bumpy ride with lots of twists and turns, but that's the. I don't think anyone becomes a good coach without those moments of hitting rock bottom or rough patches or things. Because if you had a coach that simply worked a linear path with no drama or compelling narrative, like what would inspire you to work with them, right? And so my narrative includes a 19-year career as a pharmacist with many crazy bumps and bruises in the process of becoming a coach. And yeah, that path basically started in a stable one that I didn't know how to say no to my mother, who insisted that working for a chain pharmacy was the stability that my dad never had in his challenges, having two master's degrees. And, that was hard, right? And to realize that the stability that she craved from me wasn't the end all be all. And, there was even worse was that there was a point where I became very complacent while working for this chain pharmacy because I had a really flexible schedule and I knew how rare that was. And so between the benefits and the scheduling, I just said, oh, I don't want to lose this. But then it went away anyway. And then I just said, okay, well, now I'm unhappy again. What do I do? And so I finally had the courage to branch out and reach out to some friends in my network for help and say, hey, I want to get out of this career path, but I haven't done enough on my own end to leverage, whether it's through residency or otherwise, to get off this career path of chain pharmacy into something else, but what's available. And so thankfully, a friend who worked for a pharmacy consulting company had a teaching position available because she was promoted. She said, hey, my previous position's available. Do you want to throw your hat in the ring? I said, absolutely. And, initially, and just this very short-sighted view of life where it just said, oh, finally I work for this company that I don't have to worry about life the rest of my life until I got fired 11 months later. And, basically that is a lesson that it took a while for me to appreciate because when I worked for this chain pharmacy, even if I dropped the ball or messed up, right, I I knew they would never be mad enough to either write me up or fire me because they knew how hard a worker I was. But in a smaller company, right, that is dependent on making sure that you get the job done. Otherwise, a lot of other dominoes start to fall, right? They weren't interested in stories as to why you couldn't get the job done. And so 11 months is actually very generous as to why they did before they actually just say, hey, you got to get out, right? Like this isn't working. And then the next career wake-up call happened when I stumbled into a job where 4 of my paychecks bounced filling for crooked doctors. So not only am I jeopardizing my license, I'm not even getting paid for it. But even worse was I was sending my money back home, and so I had no idea that these checks were bouncing until enough of them bounced where you realize, hey, something's wrong. And finally, how do you confront the boss who's ripping you off, right? And all these scam artists just know how to smooth you over and everything else like that. But actions always speak louder than words, right? So I was afraid to leave because I had to keep chasing down paychecks and I had to keep filling crooked scripts. It was just a really, really unproductive cycle, right? Until after 9 months, my friends thankfully got me out of that job, got me into another one that was more legit, but couldn't pay me more than 8 hours a week. And so I actually had to move to Austin briefly in order to get more shifts, in order to pay my bills. And again, I could end up in worse places, but it just didn't feel like home. That summer was very key because some friends of mine who run a pharmacy leadership nonprofit said, hey, we'd love for you to step in as a facilitator because one of ours other backed out, and we'd love for you to try this out. And so teaching leadership had something profound of an effect, just because before I just said, oh, leadership is hard. I've tried to have difficult conversations or I shy away from conflict, or I'm just taught to take the path of least resistance because you don't want to upset customers, you don't want to upset patients, you don't want to upset your teammates. Even if you're in the right, just now is not the time to stand up for yourself or stand up for what you think is correct. And so you just realize I'd rather just avoid failure than actually grow through it. But now I said to myself, well, what if I could become a good leader? Right now, this possibility started to open up in my own mind. And so when a full-time manager position opened up with this company later that fall, I said, absolutely, I want to sleep in my own bed again. I want to, I want to take on this challenge. And the following year proceeded to get written up because I had technicians that I was not writing up or dismissing because of bad behavior. And so leadership had the wonderfully painful diagnosis of, yes, their behavior is a problem and your passivity is the bigger problem. And so while I'm on probation, the company has this funding hold. So now I'm just like, well, I'm just kind of dangling right in the wind, wondering what's going to happen next. But the only reason I get an interview with my next company was that I have leadership experience on my resume. So I tell people all the time that leadership saved my career. But again, this idea of this very static stability continued to elude me and technically eludes everyone. We're just kind of the illusion of control, right? And so the next couple of jobs were like icebergs because they would fold after about 11 months because the business model wasn't working. I'd hop to another one. It also melt after about 1 or 2 years. And so ironically enough, 7 years ago, I don't know how I've been at my current job for 7 years. It's the longest one I've had in my 19-year career. But back in 2017, after another company fell, I just said, well, I'm tired of chasing doctors for prescriptions. I'm tired of fighting insurance company reimbursements. You know this, just from your own journey as a physician, right? That this is just not a helpful cycle for anybody involved with insurance. And so I said, well, maybe I want to do people development because I know I want to help people the way which I've been helped. So I could maybe avoid some of the pitfalls that I've dealt with as a leader, but still had no idea how to start or build a business. So it remained a very simple, fleeting hobby. And then when the pandemic hit, I was actually in the middle of getting formal coach training because I talked to some other coaches, said, hey, you're going to have to get a certification of some kind if you expect to have some more credibility, if you want to make this a real career. And so between the pandemic and hitting 40 and recognizing, hey, well, what do I really want to do with my life? Like, what's the most meaningful use of my time and energy? That's when I, started the company about 3.5 years ago now. And, it's still a crazy journey. Like you realize that you just graduate to a different set of problems, but hopefully these are more meaningful than the ones you were dealing with previously. And so, yeah, that's my journey to coach, and it continues to grow, and I hate to think that I keep disappointing people in the process of trying to become a better coach. But we realize, you and I both realize, hey, yeah, it's early, right? Anytime you hit a setback, you're like, hey, it's early. Let's learn, adjust, and try again. And until, we have a career that we're thankful for.
No, that's so right, and I, that's why you and I connected so well, because we both come from that healthcare space, and we've seen the problems, and we were butting heads, right? I mean, coming to the problems that you mentioned, the problems that we create, or the problems we face nowadays in this new journey, are problems we create for ourselves, versus if we work for someone in healthcare, they're problems someone else creates for us that oftentimes have nothing to do with actual patient care, with actual patient outcomes.
Yeah,
And I think that's one of the frustrations healthcare providers have with working in the system is the system creates problems for them that are irrelevant to the patient care, the patient outcomes, and yet they're problems that we have to deal with. So for other healthcare workers out there, there's millions of them out there, whether they're doctors, nurses, pharmacists, right? It doesn't matter what they are. If you are working in the healthcare system in 2024 or beyond, right now you're facing problems. Yeah, a lot of them are unhappy. Burnout, obviously, is the term that gets thrown around, whether you want to call it burnout or moral injury or whatever you want to call it, right? The symptoms are the same. What kind of hope do you think we can offer these people who are burned out, that are upset, frustrated, depressed with the system and their place within it, that there is a better path forward? Like, can we offer them hope that there really is a better life for them awaiting somewhere else?
yeah. It's a tough question because I don't want to offer anything false, right? Because
Right. Oh, for sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
but I'll use a term that I learned from Chip and Dan Heath, and if you haven't read any of their books, like Made to Stick or Switch, I highly recommend them, especially if you're in healthcare. There's a book called Upstream. They have this concept that they talk about bright spots, right? And we ask ourselves, well, what are the bright spots, in the current system? What can we say? Well, we can celebrate these things in the middle of, yeah, what we see as a very dark and exploitative system that would profit from people's sickness rather than actually make them better. And I would say, yeah, we have the opportunity always to disrupt the market, right? Like the whole point of entrepreneurship is that you don't settle for the status quo and that you're willing to test. And sometimes it will feel like you're going upstream because the people who have these systems in place that profit from them don't want you to actually succeed, right? Because that would upend their whole business model. And so whether it's capitulation or you have cash-based clinic systems that recognize, hey, we're not going to um, settle for what insurance believes is an appropriate way to practice medicine, but we're going to practice medicine the way we need to, even if it's not quite the salary that we were expecting to have coming out of a health profession school, right? Maybe the quality of life is better than the actual bottom line, right? And hopefully it's a both and. Hopefully it doesn't have to be an either or, but there will be for those of you who hope for not just hope for a better life, but want to act on it, right? Someone's going to have to build that bridge, right? Someone's going to have to say, hey, you know what? I may not see the fruit of my labor in my lifetime. I may have to be content with the fact that this is a long game and a long road, and I have to be content to build my set of bricks so that one day healthcare practitioners can actually practice medicine the way that they want to and get compensated the way that they think they ought to in that regard. So, yeah, I would say, yeah, we can offer hope because there are some models that are working slightly, and to continue to build on those and for people to not be afraid of failure even as they experiment with new healthcare models that actually promote health and actually want us to work ourselves out of a job. That's I think it's out there.
And I absolutely agree. And I think what you said is so right, is you may not see the fruits of your labor. This starts small. Right, there's going to be some people who are better suited based on their skills, their experience, based on what they're trying to do in the healthcare system, to step out and do something differently. But we're talking about a big behemoth. If it, the from what I'm trying to do right now is I'm trying to build a cash only practice, which where I'm located is a little tricky because it's very blue collar. There's not a lot of disposable income available to people. So my clientele, my market size is already going to be very tiny, just based on my geographic location of where I live. But it is possible And just depending on where you live and what you can offer, there's going to be people like neurosurgeons, orthopedic surgeons, general surgeons who still need a hospital because they need access to operating rooms and inpatient hospital stays. But if you're not tied to a hospital, if what you're doing, it doesn't require a hospital system, it is absolutely possible for you to step out of a system and build something on your own. And that's ultimately what we need to do in the long run in order to take back control over our professions, over our lives and livelihoods, right? And I think the big thing that you said there too is, yeah, in the short run, you might not make the money that a big system is able to offer you, but you're gonna make that up with a lot more freedom, a lot more better quality of life, and you're gonna find other avenues to make up that money difference somewhere down the road, right? And that's one thing that I've come to regret about the way we train doctors, at least. And I don't know how it is in the pharmacy world. I don't have that many pharmacy friends, but at least in the doctor world, you're so trained and conditioned that that is the only thing you're doing. And that's the only thing you're good for. I mean, you spend 10, 15 years of your life learning everything you can about your profession. You don't have any time to learn anything else. And yet, if you really look at how to make money, how to grow wealth, you have to have multiple sources of income. So you have to step out of your comfort zone and get into something else, like entrepreneurship of some sort, right? For anybody who's listening in, who's like, "Wow, I'm intrigued. I want to know more about what could be possible." Who are your ideal clients? Who do you like to work with in this regard?
Yeah, I love working with, I say primary focus, not exclusive focus, because it's hard to explain that nuance sometimes. But I love working with Asian leaders or leaders with Asian backgrounds that recognize, hey, I've achieved a lot, and yet I feel unprepared for this next journey. So whether it is managers and directors within 6 months of starting their roles, to say, or you have people, in their 40s or 50s even that have come to me for advice and saying, hey, I've been at this skill set for so long and I think I'm ready for something else, but I don't know what to do with my preparations or logistics because, I haven't known anything else. Like you said, right, we're so trained for a specific set of skills and practice that we realize are too late that we say, hey, you know what? I've never considered that. I might not be doing this my entire life. So for people that are looking for transitions and looking to say, hey, you know what? I'm at the edge of my comfort zone right now, and I don't know what to do next because, as you and I've seen, there's a sea of information out there, and they all have really tempting bait to say, hey, I will solve your problems for you if you just give me enough money. But in our case, right, yeah, I want people who have been used to conditioned to honor shame backgrounds that realize, hey, you know what, maybe there's something different, and maybe there is a more effective way to become this, contributor without having the emotional scars that were laid on me earlier on in life. So I'd say start there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to ask about the focus on Asians. Now, anybody who's watching this, they can look at you and say, "Yeah, Jerry looks Asian." I can see where that's coming from. So I have come to a point in my life where I don't look at people as white, black,
Yeah.
Asian, whatever. Right? Humans are
Mm-hmm.
humans in my mind,
Yeah.
and it's been incredibly freeing
Mm-hmm.
uh, to not even look at that any labels, right? Because I don't like labels. I don't like putting labels on myself. I don't like putting labels on other people.
Mm-hmm.
But especially in medicine, we have definitely found, and there's data to support this, that if you are of a certain ethnic group or geographic heritage, right? Uh, if you get care by someone from that same group,
Mm-hmm.
the outcomes tend to be better.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes sense that you focus more on Asians potentially. So what is your Asian heritage? What are your ties to the, and Asia is it's a large continent, so that
Yeah.
could be lots
Yeah.
of things too, right? So
Yeah.
tell me a little bit more about where that comes from, what your own heritage is, and where that comes from for you.
Well, thanks for the opportunity. Yeah. Incidentally, you remind me when I was talking with a Greek podcast host at one point, and I told him about my struggle. He goes, "Oh, we deal with that too in Greek society and Greek culture. So
Yeah.
we're not alone. We're all human, right?" But yeah, my specific journey. My parents are both from Taiwan, and so they came over to the U.S. for grad school, and so my lineage is Taiwanese. And there's some fun, like really nuanced discussion about difference between Chinese and Taiwanese, right? And then how do we relate to other cultures? I remember when the comedian Ali Wong talked about how she says, well, there's civil Asian and then there's jungle Asian. And, there's all sorts of, random things. And like you said, right, Asia is a large continent. And is someone who's Korean or Vietnamese or Laotian going to be able to say, well, yeah, no, Jerry understands my journey, right? And or even people who aren't of these geographical origins, right? Like you said, well, like, well, I'm not Asian, so why should I work with Jared? Said, well, if you like the story, if you relate to the pain points and how to overcome them, and you like the story of the journey and the arc, then okay, yeah, maybe I want to become someone like Jerry. Sure, right? Why not? And so to say that, yeah, there's a lot of Asians out there, right? A lot of different lineages, a lot of different categories. And like you said, we don't want to use categories any more than we have to. But if it helps, just kind of give some level of structure to navigate. Okay, sure, we can start there. So yeah, Taiwanese lineage, and how whoever relates to that is more than welcome to come work with me. Absolutely.
Yeah. No, and you're right. There has to be a good connection between the client and the coach, right? As a client, and I know this even with my own coaches that I have used in the past,
Mm-hmm.
you got to have a good connection. Sometimes you have a session with a coach, and the coach is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing everything right, but you're just not connecting right. And so there's definitely something on that deeper human level, maybe even on some spiritual sense, where you really have to be able to connect with that coach. And whether that is because of your shared Asian heritage, Taiwanese heritage, whether it's because you're both pharmacists or you just both work in
Yeah.
healthcare, or because you're simply an immigrant from somewhere and you've had struggles of assimilating here in this country,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I've been through that myself, right? I grew up in Germany, so
Yeah.
I'm just a standard middle-aged white guy at this point, right? I'm just like plain old average American at this point, but no, that having that right connection and connecting with the person and their story is so important to a successful coaching relationship. I mean, that is definitely true. So anybody listening in, if you want to reach out to Jerry, I'll make sure all his connection links are in the description below, so you can reach out to him more readily and easily. What does working with you look like, though? How, if somebody reaches out to you and says, Jerry, I want to work with you, what does that logistically actually entail?
Thanks. Yeah, I've got to get very, very clear on this so that I can actually be excited to offer this package. So, I mean, the signature. I'll say this: if you get like you want to work like the full package, like it's a 5 month program basically. So the first three are around the three V's. Okay, so the first month we meet twice a month, maybe more frequently depending on your needs. Right? Let's make you more visible. Right? Like with a lot of minorities, we talk about this invisible. I model minority that just works hard, keeps their head down, doesn't shake the boat, right? And people are, and then they wonder why they get passed over promotions, right? Well, if you're just staying invisible and hoping people notice your hard work, if you have a boss that's attentive to this, maybe you're lucky, but that's more the exception, not the rule, right? Because even if that's the case, they're more likely going to just take credit for the work that you're doing because you'd rather not advocate for yourself. And so a lot of people are also afraid, though. They say, well, if I have a bigger profile, doesn't that mean more scrutiny and liability? And we say, well, then let's help you prepare for that, right? So that you're not afraid of the spotlight. You're not afraid to, have that uncomfortable mirror right in front of you, and they're highlighting mistakes, or you're dealing with criticism, and you're saying, hey, you know what? I don't have to be afraid of this anymore, right? Because I matter. So that's the first. That would be the first month. The second month, the big one for a lot of people is learning to be more vocal, right? Because they're afraid of speaking up for themselves because they're in a culture that says, well, advocating for your needs is selfish, right? And that's true some of the time, but not all the time, right? Because if you're advocating for your needs so you can be a better employee, right? Okay, now we're talking, right? Now people are like, well, if I, keep burning myself out, right? Like we talk about, if I stay late every day and then I come in the next morning tired and then I contribute half of what I normally do because I'm too tired because I burnt myself out the day before. People have been fired for being equivalently drunk, right? And so just because they didn't use alcohol to compromise their on-clock performance, how is that any better, right? So, when you hear phrases like "don't drag our friendship into this," right? That I stole that from a friend, right? When people are like, "Oh, I thought you were my friend," right? And then it's like, "Don't drag our friendship into this," and you're like, "Oh, that's a good weapon," right? I like that. There's another coach that has a great podcast called "Say It Skillfully," and things like this, right? How do we make sure that we can in the moment, impromptu thinking on our feet. We don't have to worry about, unpredictable questions in the middle of a presentation, and they don't want to look unprepared, but they can honestly say, well, no, I don't know the answer to that. So, let's make sure that I can feel prepared for any moment when I need to speak up. Right? My clients they've never, it's interesting because you say you're a success coach, right? And the ongoing question we have for our clients is, how do we model success for them when they've never experienced it for themselves, right? Like, how do they build on success they've never had? And so to be able to introduce new tools like this is always exciting to be able to do, right? So we basically, all that to say, hey, most of the situations we have when it comes to helping people more vocal is, what do we even say, right? When do I say it? And we'll give them ideas, right? On to say, hey, how do we frame this for the other person's benefit when you say, hey, my needs are not being met, right? Or, right, maybe they're in the middle of a presentation and they just don't want to look incompetent, because how are you supposed to honestly anticipate, right, every possible question and prepare for every possible question that could be answered for you, right? Like the classic response that we use that we learned in pharmacy school was, I don't know, but I can look it up, right? And so we teach people this thing. Hey, I don't know the answer to that, right? That's a great question. I'm going to write that down, and we're going to keep going, right? And so people realize, hey, it's like this disruption, right? Like you throw a pebble into the water and it may ripple, but then you have to just let it kind of dissipate and move back to what you need to, right? To maintain that level of charisma. And so these are the things we'd like to coach people through, is to say, okay, what do you need to say? How do you need to say it? And how do you develop 10 seconds of courage so you don't let that hesitation in the moment keep you from actually putting something on the table to discuss, right? Part of it is reframing conflict, right? To say, realize, conflict doesn't mean, something's mad at you and you did something bad, but conflict is just to say, hey, there's a discrepancy we need to address, and how do we want to address it, right? When conflict is more about problem solving, and as opposed to individual competence, or like for some reason you have offended people. And then third month would be, hey, let's make you more valuable. Maybe we use an assessment to develop awareness of what your strengths are and how you want to build on them, right? People need to realize, hey, I matter to this company. I know how I add value to my organization, and I am not going to apologize for that. Like, I don't have to be ashamed of that. I don't have to let imposter syndrome get the best of me when it comes to realizing, hey, you know what? I can feel good about myself, right? I'm not going to become defensive, right? I don't want to make people uncoachable. I don't want people to just kind of block out any criticism that may feel painful but is actually helpful. But yeah, let's make sure you understand. Like, yeah, you are human. You have strengths. You have weaknesses. How do you want to compensate for them? And how are you excited to make good things and make good things happen? Then the next months would involve designing through disruption, right? When we say, hey, there's a degree of self-leadership that we need to help you figure out how to chart your own path, let's do that, right? And then finally after that, yeah, let's throw paint against the wall and say, hey, well, how do we make sure that you know how to improve yourself, right? Let me work myself out of a job, right? How many coaches do want to say that they actually want to do that, where we say, hey, you know what, I'm going to teach you how to find your own resources. I'm going to teach you how to kind of build your own system. Let's make you more productive, right? Let's overcome procrastination. Let's make sure you get in this mindset that keeps you moving forward, and to really be able to drop everything that feels good but ultimately is not important to you, right? Because there's this recurring conversation I've had lately, Felix, where you realize even if everyone likes you, right? Like, you only have time for so many people in your life, right? So you're going to have to disappoint somebody, right? And so if this continual idea of, if you don't learn to say no by design, you will have to say no by default. And right, we kind of help people in that final month to say, okay, well, let's put the finishing touches on. Okay, now you know how to be an immediate contributor to your company. We've taught you how to lead, through disruption. And then finally, let's help you be productive in the midst of transitions, because life is an iterative process, right? And as long as we get so focused on goal setting that we don't enjoy the present, then we need to balance that future us versus present us, and to say, hey, yeah, what is a life well lived? So that's what working with me looks like. It's going to involve me throwing like my entire toolbox of stuff at you, just to say, hey, look, these are resources that helped me. I want them to help you, and let me help distill this information so that You don't have to spend all your time searching around the internet like me, right? Or like filtering through all sorts of Amazon reviews. Hey, let's streamline this process for you. And yeah, I'd say that's the Jerry Fu experience. If people are excited to do that, so whether that's one-on-one coaching, or you say, hey Jerry, bring me into your organization. Let's get everybody on the same page with a common language, and to make sure people understand, hey, this is how we best navigate relationships in the workplace, and make sure that everyone knows their role, knows the goal, knows their responsibilities, and what rules that we can co-create to make sure we communicate well with each other and take care of each other. Or maybe just bring me with a keynote presentation and say, hey, Jerry, share stories, right? Inspire my people. So those are three avenues that people can consider if they want to work with me.
Yeah, I love that, the Jerry Fu experience. That's just it's such a good tagline, right? I mean, you're gonna get the Jerry Fu experience. It should be like a movie title or something. I don't know. The Jerry Fu.
Yeah, that's a start. Yeah, no, I mean that's probably what I need to put on my website now. Absolutely, the Jerry Fu experience. Absolutely
has a great ring to it. I love it. But one thing you mentioned that I think I want to just focus on for just a minute, because it's so important.
Mm-hmm.
Is the power to say no. And I've definitely come to find that in healthcare, where we are in the service of others and we always trying to put other people first, it's really hard for healthcare workers to say no. And that's such a fundamental aspect even of what I try to work on with some of my clients, is you absolutely have the ability to say no. Because at the end of the day, if you are not, this goes back to what you were saying earlier about that self-care, right? You have to look at yourself, and it's not just about everyone else all of a sudden. If you're not taking care of yourself, you're not in any capacity able to help others. You have to take care of yourself first. You have to look at yourself first. You have to work on yourself first. And that involves a lot of no, a lot of saying no to other people who are coming to want to take more of you, and so that's important. I love that you're working on that. So with the with some of those leadership skills, right? You're coming into organizations. I'm beginning to work with a new client who is very much overworked as a physician by his healthcare system, and the healthcare system is open to having a discussion with the physicians about what should be done. But they just have so many patients knocking on their door. It's really hard to keep up, and they're literally drowning in the patient care, plus all the regulatory and billing and documentation demands that are on top of them, that they're really not able to do a lot of self-care. And what I've come to find in talking to him so far is, while the organization is open to have that conversation, they're not willing to put any money forward to make the situation any different. They say, yeah, if you come up with a solution, we're willing to listen to it, but we're probably not going to do anything about it. So how do you bridge that gap? Because what I think is going to happen in the next 10 years is, as these physicians, nurses, pharmacists, and other healthcare workers get so overworked and overwhelmed, they're all just going to leave, and the healthcare system is going to be left without them. And what really bothers me is, if you take all the doctors, nurses, and physicians and pharmacists out of the picture, you don't have healthcare. But you take all the executives out, and you're just left with the doctors, nurses, pharmacists, and whatever, you still have a healthcare system, right? So we really don't need all those executives and administrators. We don't need them in order to provide healthcare to our patients. But we do need the doctors, nurses, and pharmacists. So we do need to take care of them. And so for a system that says, yeah, we're willing to listen, but we're not willing to do anything about it, is kind of, it really doesn't put any value on those people in the system, which are the only reason you have a healthcare system in the first place. So how do we bridge that gap? How can we get systems to see that it's actually worth their money and their time and their effort to take care of these healthcare workers?
Yeah. I think back to my pharmacy profession, and just how I wish more people had a spine, right? Like like, sorry guys, I mean, it is, for the longest time, I knew pharmacists that would talk so long about, oh, we need to mutiny, we need to have a rebellion, we need to show that if we walk out, that we actually have leverage, and that we need to actually take our needs seriously. It didn't happen until Pharmageddon recently, right? I thought that was the funniest term, that they finally said, you know what, we finally need to do something about it. And I was like, it's been 19 years since it got licensed, guys. What took so long, right?
Yeah.
And I think, but it takes that level of, okay, guys, we're going to have to look out for each other. We can't have any secret dissenters that are too afraid to, stand up to the system. to do that, right? Because I have people in my position that I would be that guy, right? Oh, guys, I don't want to, tick off the boss, and I don't want to lose my job if I, actually fight for, hours and working conditions that actually would, make me a better pharmacist, right? Oh, I don't, these the golden rule, right? The unofficial golden rule: he who has the gold makes the rules. Like we can't let that get in our heads. And so, if a bunch of physicians or practitioners say, hey, we're not going to see more than 8 patients a day, right? Like the arbitrary numbers, right? We just need to get very concrete for a second. Okay, I am not going to see more than 10 patients a day, right? Because this is what I need. Well, but reimbursements say, hey, you got to get through more patients because the more patients mean more reimbursements. Like, well, we need to change that model that incentivizes quantity over quality, right? That's the first thing. And until we're willing to really band together and form, whether it's a workers union of some kind, and if someone says no, tried that, doesn't work, well, it's like, well, we need to try again, right? So I think if people honestly say, hey, let's have a discussion about how us limiting our patient load, right, actually like deepens the quality of our patient care and actually retains more for the bottom line as opposed to you just trying to get numbers in the door, right? Same thing, I mean, in pharmacy, it's like, hey, well, you know what? We may need to cap the number of scripts and clinics that we work with because, like, we're going to lose these clinics anyway if we spread ourselves too thin, right? And it's hard to tell an administrator, right? Hopefully, they don't have that much leverage on us to say, hey, you're going to have to refer patients to a rival because the more you try to take from them, right? That scarcity versus abundance mindset that we talk about. Hey, you know what? There's more than enough for everything, for plenty of business to go around, and let's all flourish together, right? It's a collective community, and that instead of just fighting for our needs. And then, yeah, again, like we want to balance that, right? So self care is only selfish if it's not in the service of others, right? And that's what we're talking about here. Hey, so we need to be selfish with our employees because we want to take good care of employees so they can take good care of our patients, and the more our patients we take care of within our limits and capacities, that technically is going to result in higher quality care, and that's going to result in more referrals, right? That we may have to turn down, and that's okay. That's the problem we want to have, is to say, hey, you know what, I can't afford to burn out my workforce, and so therefore we're going to have to put you with a rival that we also respect because they also understand, hey, you know what. They also do a good job taking care of the people and making sure, hey, hopefully they're not at capacity so that you can find someone, that can help you as well. So that would be my start, is just to say, hey, let's advocate for our employees and make sure we make this a great place to work. Right.
Yeah, no, there's a few things there that you said that are, I think, so relevant. I think the first thing I want to point out is it's not about you losing a job. That's, I think, one of the big problems is that being a doctor, being a pharmacist has just become another job.
Yeah.
It's no longer a profession. I mean, why do you spend 15 years in school foregoing all the money that you could be making during that time somewhere else if it's just another job? So you're not losing a job. Oh, you might be losing the job, but you're not losing your profession, right? You're just taking back control over your profession, right? Someone else right now has control over that profession. And you're so right with the one who has the gold has the control, right? Because right now, a great example that comes to mind is a patient came to me once when I was still working in a hospital system. It was like, hey, doc, can you explain this $500 some bill to me? And I said, well, first of all, I have nothing to do with billing, so I don't know, but let me take a look at it. And we looked at it, and sure enough, he was billed over $500 for a visit to clinic with me, and it was 15-minute visit that I spent like 2 minutes in the room with him. And he's like, you make it bank. And so I showed him on the CMS website that the CMS reimbursement for me as a physician, now granted I was salaried, so that didn't really matter to me, but
Yeah.
I was like, CMS reimburses the physician for this visit, like it was like $34 and some change, right? So out of the $500 some bill, the physician only got $35, and that was just mind blowing to him. He's like, "Holy crap! Where did all the rest of the money go?" It's like, look, honestly, I have no idea, but this is the problem, right? Because we have a third party or multiple third parties, right? So instead of a patient paying me directly, which they do nowadays, right? They pay me. And therefore, I work for them as opposed to an insurance company paying me. And now me working for the insurance company, they pay me directly. But if you think about how the money right now runs in the healthcare system, a patient pays an insurance company, which then pays a system. The insurance company pays back their investors. There may be suppliers somewhere in between, to wholesalers or whatnot, right? And then ultimately, it trickles down to the actual frontline clinical staff, and the nurses, doctors, and pharmacists are the last people to put their hand into the pot, and we just get scraps as a
Yeah.
result of that, right?
Yep.
Everyone else makes their money first, and
Yeah.
then we are the last ones to get whatever's left over, and that's part of the problem.
Mhm.
So I'm a much bigger fan of going back to the old school system where patients pay me directly, because now, I work for whoever pays me, right? We all do.
Mhm.
And so
Yeah.
if a patient pays me, guess what? I'm working for you now, right? And
Mhm.
and you get 100% of me. You don't get any of the regulatory stuff. We really can just focus on what your needs are, what your wants are, what your desires are. We can create a care plan that aligns with your values and your goals. And guess what? Did I lose my job as a result of that? Yes. Did I lose my profession? Absolutely not, right? I'm
Mhm.
still a physician. I still do that for my patients. And I do that in a much more freeing and liberating way, because I can actually focus on their wants, needs, and desires, which is so awesome. But listen, before my internet connection breaks up again, I want to get to some other things.
Yeah.
So the last segment here is always questions that I ask out of my simple networking toolbook.
Okay.
It's a book that's really designed to do networking for you. It's a bunch of questions about who someone is and not just what they do,
Mhm.
to get a better feel for the depth of the person. And you give the book to someone else, who gives it to someone else, who gives it to someone else, and at some point,
Beautiful.
hopefully, the book makes it back to you. So I
Mhm.
want to ask you a few questions out of the book to find out more about who Jerry Fu is, and what the Jerry Fu experience really is all about. So you
Wonderful.
mentioned obviously your Taiwanese heritage. So
Mhm.
the first question I have to ask is, what is a place you haven't been to yet but really want to visit?
Oh yeah, so many, but currently on the list, Melbourne, Australia. Yeah.
That's awesome. Why Melbourne specifically?
Yeah, so I did a trip to Australia. I did 2 weeks going from the East Coast from Cairns, where the Great Barrier Reef is, through Sydney, and that was probably the best 2 weeks of my life. And yeah, I just said, you know what, I want to revisit this culture, and I heard that Melbourne has more of a European feel, which even better, right? I love Europe as well. And so yeah, between the people and the transportation and the potential history and culture there, yeah, I've had a fascination with that city for a while now, and trying to make sure that I carve out time and energy and money to actually make it there at some point. Of course, Australia has its own challenges as well right now. Like,
Yeah.
but what country doesn't? So yeah, that between anytime I hear a city, one of my favorite cities, whether it's Europe or otherwise, right, when it's a combination of history and transportation and architecture and food and people, like in Melbourne hits all five on those. So definitely excited for that.
That's awesome. All right, you mentioned food, so this next question actually comes out of the second edition that's not out yet, but I'm
Oh,
working to edit
nice.
it. So,
Wow.
what is a food that you like to eat that other people may find odd?
Ooh, um, squid.
Okay. So, are we talking just like calamari or some different preparation of squid?
Yeah, no, great question. Yeah, there's a spicy squid, the chili oil squid that we get frequently here in Chinatown, here in Houston, where I'm based out of, and yeah, it always scares people, I think, a little bit if they're not used to seafood or they're not used to the kick that the chili oil gives. But yeah, I think stir fried squid in chili oil with vegetables is a great start, just to kind of give a litmus test of what people are willing to try and challenge themselves
All
on.
right.
I would never ask people to try like tripe or like pork blood or something like that. That's a little bit overrated for me. But for people that want a more authentic experience, hey, right, it's there for you if you want it.
Yeah. All right, that's fair. That's fair. That's awesome. One of the I usually ask my favorite question, but you're a very intellectual person, and so I have to ask this
Go for it.
question. Really,
Yeah.
where is your favorite thinking spot? Where do your best ideas come from?
Oh, wow. Great question. I think, hmm, yeah, that's going to take a pause. I think, honestly, um, in my bedroom, I'll just be meditating, right, on my Smiling Mind app, and all of a sudden, just, oh, you know what? They're ideas, right? And I think the difference is that it's less about geographic location as opposed to having something to capture those ideas immediately when you get them. Because as we both know, like creativity is a muscle, right? The more you use, the stronger it gets. And so I took this from Getting Things Done, a great book by David Allen. And I'll say this real quick is that when you let your mind be creative, right? You have an external storage system to capture your ideas, and you focus less of your mind on retaining knowledge as opposed to allowing yourself creative space. And again, there's some great debates on this. Not everyone agrees with that. To say, well, you get that part, the memory recall is going to atrophy if you don't do it. But what is the best use of your mind, right? And so when you have a system in place that just lets you generate ideas because your mind's like, oh, you're going to capture them, yeah, here's a couple more, and then you're like, oh, wow, that's so. I guess my bedroom then is where it happens because I just have my phone right there. I'm like, oh yeah, let me jot down that idea. So
Yeah.
bedroom.
No, that's fair. I think for me too, one of the places for me is sort of in that twilight, right as I'm falling asleep
Yeah.
in my bedroom. That's really where I create fantastic ideas and thoughts. And sadly, by the next morning, I usually forgot all of them. But in that moment, they just always sound incredibly epic and
Good.
powerful. And just in my head, it's a powerful place to
Awesome.
be. And when it comes to what you said too on the creative side of things. One thing I always tell my kids is create more than you consume.
Okay.
Obviously, we have to consume some stuff in order to build our knowledge, in order to expand our knowledge.
Good.
But there's definitely something in terms of being active and proactive about the stuff that comes in order to turn that into our own thoughts and experiences and opinions. We have to create, and I think as long as you create more than you consume, you're going to be in a good balance. So yeah, create more than you consume. At
Nice.
least that's the way I look at things. But you need both. You really need
Yeah.
both. All right. This next question comes to you from Nancy Gentle Boudry. Every guest gets to ask the next guest a question, not knowing who that person is, what they
Oh
do,
wow.
or where the conversation even takes us. So
Yeah.
Nancy wants to know if you were given a block of time to just be with yourself,
Mhm.
would you spend it scrolling social media, reading a book, or what else would you be doing if you had that block of time without interruption just for yourself?
Yeah, it would have to be some combination of either reading a book, journaling, or sleeping. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, it comes back to that some of the creative side in you. I could definitely see that. Like I said, that's what I mean. Like, there's definitely some intellectuality to the way you go about the world, and I think that makes perfect sense for you. Well, look, it is your opportunity to pass it forward. What
Okay.
question would you like to ask the next guest on the show, not knowing who that person is, what they do, or where the conversation is taking us?
Whew. Lightning in a bottle, Dr. Felix. I got it. I was like, oh, I got a good one. What do you need to stop doing?
Oh wow. That's a great one because most people are always like, "What do you need to start doing?" But what do you need to stop doing? I love that. Yeah, that reminds me. I was listening to a podcast episode a few weeks ago where we actually talked about specifically on taking stuff away versus adding when it comes to improving things. And there's been some research done. For example, if you look at they studied college students, for example, they gave them scientific abstracts and said, "Improve this," and like 92% of people who improved simply added to it. They didn't take anything out.
Yeah.
But the real power comes in taking stuff away,
Hmm.
making it simpler, right?
Yeah.
Taking some of the fluff out and really streamlining the process. So that's a fantastic question. What do you need to stop doing? Well, I got it written down. So whoever
Good.
the next guest is, I'll be sure to ask that question. All right. So here's the big one. How can people reach out to you? How could they connect with you if they want to get the Jerry Fu experience? How can they do so?
Yeah, yeah. I'll the simple way you can connect with me on LinkedIn if you want. But all the best resources come through my website, www.adaptingleaders.com. I even give away a free 5-point guide to help with navigating difficult conversations, especially if you're a recovery people pleaser like I am. So that is adaptingleaders.com/guide, GUIDE. And yeah, there's a free blog and other resources, schedule a complimentary consult. So yeah, whether it's LinkedIn or adaptingleaders.com, we'd love to hear from you.
That's fantastic. I'll make sure, like I said before, to leave all those links in the description below so people can click on them and connect with you more easily and more readily. That's awesome. Jerry, any last words from you to the world?
Just want to ask you guys, what would it take to live a life without regret?
Powerful question. Powerful question. I think we all need to ask ourselves that, right? I have my own answers there, but I want to know. I want to know what other people have to say. So, anyways, thank you so much
Yeah,
for doing this. This has been an incredible conversation, except for my internet
it's
connectivity, which has
okay.
been
Life happens. We're gonna keep rolling.
uh,
It's okay.
killing me this morning. Anyways, thanks for being here, Jerry. It's
Thank
been a
you.
powerful conversation. Let's see where life takes us.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
All right, I really hope you enjoyed that. The questions that I asked towards the end are from my new book, The S.I.M.P.L.E Networking Tool. It's a great book that redefines how we network. It's all about who someone is and not what they are. So if you want to get your own book, it's available on Amazon. If you want to learn more, there's videos about it here on YouTube. So you can check out this amazing new social science experiment. I'm so excited for it. If you do get a book and you do start your own, please let me know how it goes and what your experience is like. I'm working on the second edition and I want to make it the best one yet. So be sure to tag me, let me know how it goes. Thanks for watching.